I didn't come to my wedding to make a scene. I came to tell the truth. The ballroom at the Manhattan Hotel was perfect. Chandeliers hanging like stars, white roses everywhere, 200 guests dressed in their best. Smiling and clinking glasses like this was the happiest day of anyone's life. My fiancé Ethan was beside me at the head table, squeezing my hand under the tablecloth like he could feel my pulse racing. My father stood at the microphone, holding his champagne glass high, telling a story about how proud he was of his daughters. About how Vanessa had always been so brilliant, so full of potential, how she was pursuing her dreams and never giving up. I watched my sister glow. She sat 2 tables away in a sage green dress that cost more than my monthly rent. Hair styled perfectly, makeup flawless, smiling like she'd earned every word coming out of his mouth. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. My aunt nodded along. Guests who barely knew us smiled and raised their glasses. And I sat there, a 34-year-old nurse who'd worked 12-hour shifts for the last 12 years, who'd paid her own way through everything, who'd been called independent so many times it stopped sounding like a compliment. Dad wrapped up his toast with a line about family and unconditional love, and everyone clapped. Then I stood up. Ethan's hand tightened on mine. "You sure?" he whispered. I nodded. I picked up the slim folder I'd kept under my chair all night and walked toward the microphone. My father's smile faltered. My mother went pale. Vanessa tilted her head, confused, but still smiling, like she thought I was about to thank everyone for coming. I took the mic and looked out at the room. 200 people. Friends, family, co-workers, people who thought they knew us. "I just want to say one thing before we move on," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I didn't come here tonight with feelings. I came here with numbers." My father tried to laugh it off. "Paige, come on." I opened the folder. "Before I rewind and tell you how we got here, where are you watching from? Drop your city and state in the comments. And if you love family revenge stories with receipts, hit like and subscribe, because this ends at a wedding microphone. Let me take you back 6 weeks. I live in Brooklyn, in a 1-bedroom apartment I can barely afford on a nurse's salary. I work at a hospital in Manhattan, pulling shifts that start at 6 a.m. and sometimes don't end until after dark. I've been doing this for 12 years. 12 years of saving lives, comforting patients, holding hands while people said goodbye to the ones they loved. And in all that time, my parents never once asked me how I was doing. Not really. Because I was independent, I was fine. I was the daughter who didn't need help. Vanessa, on the other hand, has never kept a job. She's 29, 5 years younger than me, and she's been a student for as long as I can remember. She studied art history, psychology, graphic design, marketing, creative writing. Always 1 semester away from finishing. Always needing just a little more time, just a little more money. And my parents paid for all of it. Tuition, rent, groceries, car insurance, credit card bills, emergencies that came up every other month. They called it investing in her future. They called it supporting her dreams. When I was her age, I was working 2 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night. But I didn't complain. I stayed quiet. I built my life. I met Ethan, a kind, steady man who worked in IT and treated me like I mattered. We got engaged last year, and I started planning a wedding I could actually afford. Small, simple, nothing extravagant. And then, 6 weeks ago, I sat down with my father and asked him a question I'd been swallowing for years. Why did Vanessa get everything while I got nothing? He looked at me like I'd asked him to explain gravity. "Paige," he said, "you're independent. You always have been. Your sister can't survive on her own. She needs someone to look after her. I stared at him. I wasn't born independent, Dad. You forced me to be that way. He shook his head. That's not fair. We did the best we could for both of you. You did the best you could for her, I said. I had to do the best I could for myself. He didn't have an answer for that. He just looked uncomfortable, like I was being dramatic, like I was making a problem out of nothing. That night, I went home and opened my laptop. I pulled up old emails, old texts, old records I'd kept without even realizing why, and I started building a timeline. A timeline of every time I'd tried to help Vanessa, every time I'd handed her an opportunity, every time she'd refused, failed, or simply walked away, while my parents quietly paid the bill. I didn't bring feelings to my wedding. I brought numbers. The first job I offered Vanessa was 3 years ago. I'd been working at the hospital for 9 years by then, and one of the unit managers mentioned they were hiring for a front desk receptionist position. It wasn't glamorous, answering phones, scheduling appointments, checking patients in, but it was steady, it paid decent, and it came with benefits. I thought of Vanessa immediately. She'd just finished another semester of figuring things out and was complaining about how hard it was to find work in her field. Which field? I wasn't sure anymore. She changed majors like other people change shoes. So I called her. There's an opening at my hospital. Reception. I can put in a good word for you. It's entry level, but it's stable. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then she laughed. Paige, I'm not doing reception work. I have a degree. In what? I asked. Psychology, she said. Then, after a beat, well, I'm finishing it. You know that. Vanessa, you've been finishing it for 4 years. Because I'm being thorough, she snapped. Not everyone rushes through life like you. I didn't push, I just said, the offer's there if you want it. She never replied. 2 weeks later, my mom called me. Can you lend Vanessa a little money? She's short on rent this month. I said no, I didn't have extra to give. My mom sighed like I was being difficult, and then she paid it herself. That was the pattern. Vanessa refused help that required effort. My parents paid for the refusal. And I was expected to stay quiet because I was doing fine. But I wasn't fine. I was tired. I was angry. And I was starting to realize that independent wasn't a personality trait I was born with. It was survival. So I started keeping track. I went back through my emails and found the thread. I'd sent Vanessa the job posting, the application instructions, even offered to walk her resume over to HR myself. Her response was a single line, not for me, but thanks. I screenshotted it. I saved it in a folder titled Vanessa Receipts. A year later, I tried again. Another job opened up. Unit clerk this time. Slightly more responsibility, better pay. I sent her the listing. This time, she didn't even respond. But 2 days later, my dad called and asked if I could help out because Vanessa's car insurance was due. I said no again. He paid it himself. I added that to the folder, too. The third time I offered her a job, I didn't tell my parents. I just forwarded her the posting. Administrative assistant, decent hours, full benefits. It was practically gift-wrapped. She replied, I already told you I'm not interested in hospital work. So I replied, what work are you interested in? She never answered. But a month later, she posted pictures on social media from a weekend trip to the Hamptons, paid for, I later found out, by my parents who'd given her money for school expenses. That's when I realized something I'd been avoiding for years. Vanessa didn't need help. She needed to be saved from accountability. And my parents were happy to do it, as long as it meant they didn't have to admit she was capable of failing. After my conversation with my dad 6 weeks ago, the one where he told me I was independent and Vanessa needed someone to look after her, I went home and pulled up that folder again. 3 job offers, 3 refusals, thousands of dollars in bailouts. And that was just the beginning. I opened an old email thread I'd saved from 2 years ago. Subject line, Vanessa, interview scheduled. I'd managed to get her an interview for a patient services role. Something easy, something she could have done in her sleep. The hiring manager was a friend. It was practically guaranteed. Vanessa missed the interview, didn't call, didn't show up. When I asked her what happened, she said she forgot and that she'd been stressed. My mom defended her. She's going through a lot right now, Paige. Be patient. I was always patient. That was the problem. I opened another file and stared at the text exchange from that month where my mom had Venmo'd Vanessa $800 for expenses. I didn't bring feelings to my wedding. I brought numbers. And now, sitting in my Brooklyn apartment with the lights dim and the city humming outside, I kept digging. Because I realized I wasn't just tracking job offers anymore. I was tracking money. And once I started adding it up, I couldn't stop. The week after my conversation with Dad, I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. Vanessa can't survive on her own. It echoed in my head while I worked my shifts, while I came home to my tiny apartment, while I looked at my bank account and did the mental math I'd been doing since I was 20 years old. Rent, utilities, groceries, subway card, student loan payment. I'd been surviving on my own since college. Vanessa was 29 and still being handed everything. So I kept digging. I started with the obvious stuff. The things I could remember without needing proof. The time she needed a new laptop for school and my parents bought her a MacBook Pro. The time her roommate moved out and she couldn't cover rent, so Dad paid 2 months up front. The time she got into a fender bender and they covered the deductible plus the insurance hike for 6 months. But then I started finding the things I'd forgotten. Old text threads in the family group chat. Venmo transactions I'd seen but never questioned. Posts on social media that didn't match the struggling student story she always told. I pulled up my mom's Venmo. It was public because, of course, it was, and started scrolling. Payments to Vanessa going back years. $200 here, $400 there, $650 for books, $1, $100 for emergency expenses. I added them up in a spreadsheet, just the last 3 years, just what I could see. The number made my stomach turn. But it wasn't just the money. It was the fact that every single time Vanessa needed something, my parents dropped everything. And every single time I needed something, even just emotional support, even just acknowledgement, I got a polite deflection and a reminder that I was strong and capable. I thought about the time I'd called my mom in tears after a patient died in my arms during a code. She'd said, "You're so good at handling these things, Paige. I don't know how you do it." And then she'd changed the subject to Vanessa's latest drama with a professor who didn't understand her vision. I thought about my college graduation, where my parents showed up late because Vanessa had a crisis that morning. Something about a boy, something forgettable. I stood in my cap and gown, waiting, watching other families take pictures, and when they finally arrived, my dad's first words were, "Sorry, honey. You know how your sister gets." I thought about the time I got promoted to charge nurse, a huge deal, something I'd worked years for, and my mom's response was, "That's wonderful, sweetie," before immediately asking if I could lend Vanessa money for a security deposit. I said no. She asked why I was being difficult. I closed my laptop and stared at the wall of my Brooklyn apartment. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was clarity. This wasn't new. This was the family I'd always had. I'd just been too busy surviving to see it. The next day, my mom called. "Vanessa's really excited about your wedding," she said. She was hoping she could say a few words during the reception, as your sister. I almost laughed. She hasn't asked me a single question about the wedding, Mom. Well, she's been busy. She's always busy, I said. Busy doing what? There was a pause. Paige, don't start. Start what? You know what? She said, her voice tight. Vanessa looks up to you. She wants to be part of your day. Don't make this difficult. I thought about the spreadsheet sitting open on my laptop. I thought about the 3 job offers, the missed interview, the endless bailouts, the years of being told I was fine while Vanessa got every single safety net. Mom, I said, did you ever stop to think that maybe I needed someone to look after me too? She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, you never asked. I shouldn't have to ask, I said. She sighed. I have to go. Just think about letting Vanessa speak, okay? It would mean a lot to her. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding my phone, staring at the screen, and I realized something I'd been avoiding my whole life. They didn't see me as strong. They saw me as convenient. I opened the spreadsheet again, and I kept adding. 2 weeks before the wedding, Vanessa and I met for coffee in Manhattan. She'd suggested it, which was unusual. We didn't really do one-on-one time. Most of our interactions happened in group settings. Family dinners, holidays, obligatory texts in the group chat. But she said she wanted to, quote, catch up before the big day, so I agreed. We met at a cafe near Bryant Park. She showed up 20 minutes late, which wasn't surprising, carrying an iced latte that cost more than my lunch. She hugged me, sat down, and immediately started talking about herself. Her latest program, her professors, the toxic people in her cohort who didn't get her, a guy she was seeing who wasn't texting her back fast enough. She talked for 15 minutes straight without asking me a single question. Finally, she paused to take a sip of her drink. So, wedding planning, is it stressful? It's fine, I said. I bet. I don't know how you do it. Working all the time and planning a wedding, I'd be a disaster. I almost bit my tongue, but I didn't. You'd figure it out if you had to. She blinked. What does that mean? Nothing, I said. Just that people rise to the occasion when they need to. Are you saying I don't? Her tone shifted, defensive, sharp. I'm saying you've never had to, I said, because someone always catches you. She set her cup down. Wow, okay. Are we really doing this right now? Doing what? This thing where you act like you're better than me because you have a job. I stared at her. Vanessa, I offered you jobs 3 times. You said no every time. Because I'm not doing reception work, Paige. I'm not answering phones at a hospital. I have actual goals. And I don't? You know what I mean, she said, waving a hand. You're a nurse. That's great. But I'm trying to build something bigger. With whose money? I asked. Her face flushed. What is your problem? My problem, I said slowly, is that you've been building something bigger for 10 years, and Mom and Dad have paid for every second of it. And when I try to help you, you act like I'm insulting you. Maybe because you are, she shot back. You've always looked down on me, Paige. You think I don't know that? You think I don't see the way you judge me? I don't judge you for struggling, I said. I judge you for refusing help and then taking money instead. She stood up, chair scraping loud against the tile. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Vanessa! You know what? She said, her voice rising just enough that people at the next table looked over. You've always been like this. Cold, resentful. Just because you wanted to work yourself to death doesn't mean the rest of us have to. I worked myself to death because I didn't have a choice. No, she said, leaning down, her voice low and mean. You worked yourself to death because you're boring. You're a nurse, Paige. You follow rules. You do what you're told. You've never taken a risk in your life. So don't stand there and act like you're some kind of hero just because mom and dad see potential in me that they don't see in you." The words landed like a slap. She grabbed her purse and walked out. I sat there, hands shaking, staring at the half-full cup of coffee in front of me. People around me went back to their conversations, their laptops, their phones. No one cared. No one noticed. But I noticed. I pulled out my phone and opened a new note. Title: Vanessa, Total. And I started adding everything I could remember. Be honest, if your parents funded one sibling and called you independent as an excuse, do you expose it publicly or handle it privately? Drop your answer in the comments. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying what Vanessa had said. Mom and dad see potential in me that they don't see in you. It wasn't even the cruelty that hurt the most. It was the fact that she believed it. She genuinely thought she deserved everything she'd been given, and that I deserved nothing because I hadn't taken risks. I'd taken plenty of risks. I'd risked my health working double shifts. I'd risked my savings to pay for my own education. I'd risked my sanity staying quiet while my parents poured everything into her and called it love. So I stopped being quiet. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, a cup of cold coffee, and a spreadsheet that was about to become a weapon. I started with what I could prove. Bank transfers I'd seen in the family group chat. Venmo payments my mom hadn't bothered to make private. Text threads where Vanessa asked for money and my parents said yes within minutes. Then I went further back. I called my mom's cell phone records, publicly visible ones, the ones tied to shared family accounts. I pulled up old emails my dad had forwarded me years ago, things I'd ignored at the time but never deleted. I searched my own text history for phrases like Vanessa needs and can you help. The pattern was suffocating. Tuition payments, $18,000 over 3 years, for programs she never finished. Rent assistance, $32,000 across 5 apartments in 4 years. Car payments, insurance, repairs, $11,000. Credit card bailouts, $9, $500. Emergency cash transfers, $14, $200. Vacation funds, furniture, laptops, therapy copays, gym memberships, subscription services she claimed she needed for school. I added it up 3 times because I didn't believe it the first 2. The total, just in the last 6 years, was over $95,000. And that was only what I could see. That didn't include the stuff I couldn't track. Cash handouts, bills paid directly, groceries bought on their credit cards when she visited. I sat back and stared at the number. My parents were supposed to be retiring soon. My dad had mentioned downsizing. My mom had started clipping coupons last year, something she'd never done before, and I thought it was just normal aging. Normal tightening of budgets. But it wasn't normal. It was Vanessa. She wasn't just draining their wallets. She was draining their future. And they couldn't see it. Because every time she asked, they saw potential. They saw a daughter who needed saving. They didn't see a 29-year-old woman who'd figured out that refusing to grow up was easier than trying. I thought about what my dad had said. Your sister can't survive on her own. He was wrong. She could. She just didn't have to, so she didn't. My phone buzzed. A text from my dad. Hey, Paige, quick question. Can we borrow $1? $200? We had to help Vanessa with something, and we're a little short this month. We'll pay you back after your mom's next check. I stared at the message. They'd never asked me for money before. Not once. And now, 2 weeks before my wedding, they were asking me to cover the cost of bailing out my sister again. I didn't respond right away. I screenshotted the text and added it to the folder. Then I looked at my bank account. I had $1,800 saved for the honeymoon. Ethan and I were going to drive upstate, stay at a small inn, do something quiet and simple, because that's all we could afford after paying for the wedding ourselves. If I gave them $1,200, we'd have $600 left. Barely enough for gas and food. I texted back, "What did Vanessa need?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, she had an unexpected expense. "We'll explain later. Can you help or not?" "No," I typed. "I can't." The response came fast. "Paige, it's just until payday. You know we're good for it." "You asked me 2 weeks before my wedding," I wrote. "And you won't even tell me what it's for." No response. 5 minutes passed. Then my mom called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message. I didn't listen to it. I already knew what it would say. That I was being selfish. That family helps family. That Vanessa was going through something, and I should be more understanding. I closed my laptop. I walked into my bedroom and pulled the slim folder out of my desk drawer, the one I'd been adding printed pages to, one by one, over the last 2 weeks. Job offers, screenshots, receipts, the spreadsheet, printed and highlighted. I wasn't bringing feelings to my wedding, I was bringing proof. And in 6 days, everyone was going to see it. The night before the wedding, I couldn't eat. Ethan noticed. He sat across from me at the tiny dining table in my apartment, watching me push pasta around my plate. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Yes, I do. Paige, I'm on your side, you know that. But once you do this, you can't take it back." "I don't want to take it back," I said. "I'm tired of pretending." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Then I'm with you, whatever happens." I squeezed his hand and tried to smile, but my stomach was in knots, not because I was afraid of what I was about to do, because I knew it was going to hurt people I used to love without question, and even after everything, that still mattered. The wedding day started early. Hair and makeup at 8 a.m., photos at noon. Ceremony at 3 p.m. The reception started at 5, and by the time we sat down for dinner, I felt like I'd been holding my breath for hours. The ballroom looked perfect. White linens, soft lighting, flowers everywhere. My mom cried during the ceremony. My dad walked me down the aisle and kissed my cheek before handing me off to Ethan. Vanessa sat in the 3rd row, wearing the sage green dress she'd posted on Instagram 3 days earlier, captioned, "Sister of the Bride Energy." She hadn't spoken to me since the coffee shop. She'd texted the family group chat a few polite lines, "Can't wait to celebrate you both," but she hadn't called, hadn't apologized, hadn't acknowledged what she'd said. During cocktail hour, she worked the room like she was the bride. I watched her from across the space, laughing with my cousins, posing for pictures, holding court with guests who didn't know any better. My mom found me near the bar. "Everything is beautiful, sweetheart," she said, hugging me. Then, quieter, "Your father and I are really proud of you." "Are you?" I asked. She pulled back, confused. "Of course we are." "You've never said that before," I said. "Not once, not when I graduated nursing school, not when I got promoted, not when I bought my own apartment. But you say it to Vanessa every time she enrolls in a new program she won't finish." Her face tightened. "Paige, not today." "When then?" I asked. "When is it okay to say the truth?" "This is your wedding," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Don't ruin it." I didn't answer. She walked away, shaking her head like I was the problem, like I was the one who'd spent 34 years making everything difficult. Dinner was served. Toasts began. My maid of honor went first. Sweet, funny, heartfelt. Ethan's best man went next. Then my father stood up. He cleared his throat, smiled at the crowd, and started talking. About family, about love, about how proud he was of both his daughters, about how Vanessa had always been so passionate, so driven, so full of dreams, about how I'd always been so strong, so independent, so capable of handling anything. There it was again, independent, the word they used when they didn't want to admit they'd ignored me, the compliment that was actually an excuse. He raised his glass. To Paige and Ethan, may your life together be filled with love, laughter, and the strength to face anything. Everyone clapped. My mother dabbed her eyes. Vanessa smiled and raised her glass, and I felt something inside me snap, not break, snap clean. I stood up. Ethan looked at me, his eyes asking the same question he'd asked last night. I nodded. I reached under my chair and pulled out the folder. It was thin, just a few pages, but it felt like it weighed 100 pounds. If you're on Paige's side and you're tired of seeing the responsible child get punished for being strong, subscribe, because the next part is where she finally stops protecting everyone's lies. I walked to the microphone. My father stepped aside, confused but still smiling. My mother's face went pale. Vanessa tilted her head, her expression shifting from curiosity to something sharper. I took the microphone and looked out at 200 people who thought they knew my family. Thank you all for being here, I said. My voice was steady, calm. I just need to say one thing before we move forward. I didn't come here tonight with feelings. I came here with numbers. My father tried to laugh. Paige, come on! I opened the folder, and I began. I looked down at the first page in the folder. 3 emails, printed and highlighted. I didn't need to read them. I'd memorized every word, but I wanted everyone else to see them too. 3 years ago, I offered my sister a job, I said. My voice carried across the ballroom, clear and even. A receptionist position at the hospital where I work. Stable hours. Benefits. A real paycheck. She told me she wasn't interested. She said she had a degree and didn't need to answer phones. I held up the first email. Here's the proof. Job posting, application instructions, my offer to walk her resume to HR myself. Her response? Not for me, but thanks. I set it down on the table beside me. The room was silent now. No clinking glasses, no side conversations, just 200 people staring at me. 2 weeks later, I continued, my mother called and asked me to lend Vanessa money because she was short on rent. I said no, I didn't have extra. So my parents paid it themselves. $850. I held up the second page. A Venmo screenshot. My mom's account, public, paying Vanessa with a little heart emoji and the caption, "Love you, sweetie." My mother's face had gone from pale to red. My father was frozen, his champagne glass still halfway raised. Vanessa was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. I tried again a year later, I said. Unit clerk position. Better pay, better hours. I sent her the listing. She didn't respond. But 2 days later, my dad called and asked if I could help out because Vanessa's car insurance was due. I said no. He paid it. $320 a month for 6 months. That's $1, $920. I flipped to the next page. A text thread. My dad asking, me saying no. Vanessa posting a photo from the Hamptons 3 weeks later with the caption, "Much needed break." Someone in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. I kept going. The third time I offered her a job, she told me she wasn't interested in hospital work. So I asked her what work she was interested in. She never answered. But she did accept $1, $100 from my parents that same month for school expenses. I held up the spreadsheet now, the one I'd stayed up 3 nights building. The one with every transaction I could track, every bailout, every tuition payment for programs she never finished, every rent check for apartments she couldn't afford. Over the last 6 years, I said, My parents have given my sister over $95,000. Tuition, rent, car payments, credit card bailouts, vacations, emergency expenses that weren't emergencies. The number hung in the air. I watched my mother's hand go to her mouth. My father looked like he'd been slapped. And 2 weeks ago, I said, my voice shaking now, not with fear, but with something sharper, something I'd been holding back for years. My father texted me and asked if I could lend them $1,200 because they were short after helping Vanessa with something. He said they'd pay me back after my mom's next check. I held up my phone, the screenshot blown up and printed. I said no, because I've been paying for my own life since I was 20 years old, and 2 weeks before my wedding, I wasn't going to pay for hers too. Vanessa stood up. "You're insane," she said, her voice shaking. "You're doing this at your own wedding? Are you serious?" "I'm doing this," I said, "because I'm done being quiet. I'm done being called independent, like it's a compliment, when really it just means you didn't think I was worth helping. I'm done watching you get bailed out while I get ignored." "You were never ignored," Vanessa shouted. I worked 12-hour shifts while you changed majors for the 4th time," I said, my voice cutting through hers. "I paid my own rent while you lived in apartments our parents funded. I saved lives while you posted pictures from vacations I couldn't afford. And every time I tried to help you, you acted like I was insulting you. So I stopped trying." Vanessa's face twisted. "You're jealous. You've always been jealous." "No," I said. "I'm tired. There's a difference." I looked at my parents now. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother was crying, but I didn't know if it was shame or anger. "You told me Vanessa couldn't survive on her own," I said to my father. "But she can. She's just never had to. Because every time she falls, you catch her. And every time I fall, you remind me I'm strong enough to get back up alone." I set the folder down on the table. My hands were shaking now, but my voice was steady. "So here's the truth," I said. "I'm not your backup plan anymore. I'm not the emergency contact you call when Vanessa needs bailing out. I'm not the daughter you ignore, because I don't fall apart. Starting today, I'm done. If Vanessa truly can't function, if she really needs someone to look after her, then that's not a blank check. That's a real problem that requires real help. But cash isn't care, and I'm not paying for either one anymore." Vanessa grabbed her purse and stormed toward the exit. Halfway across the room, she turned back. "You're dead to me," she spat. "Good," I said. "Then we're even." She left. The door slammed. The room stayed silent for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, Ethan stood. He walked over to me, took my hand, and kissed my forehead. "I love you," he whispered. I nodded. I couldn't speak yet. My chest felt like it was cracking open. My mother was still crying. My father was staring at the table. A few guests started clapping. Tentative at first, then louder. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to know I wasn't wrong. My parents left an hour later. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't apologize. They just gathered their things, avoided eye contact, and walked out of the ballroom like I was the one who'd ruined everything. Maybe I had. Maybe standing up at my own wedding with a folder full of receipts was dramatic. Maybe I should have handled it privately, the way my mother had begged me to. But I'd tried private. I'd tried quiet. I'd tried swallowing it for 34 years. And it had gotten me nothing but exhaustion and a label I never asked for. The rest of the reception was strange. Some guests avoided me. Others came up and hugged me, whispering things like, "I had no idea," or "You're so brave." A few of my cousins admitted they'd suspected something was off, but didn't know how bad it was. One of Ethan's friends said, "That took guts." I didn't feel brave. I felt raw. But I also felt lighter. like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't realize was crushing me until I finally set it down. Ethan and I left for our honeymoon the next morning. We drove upstate like we'd planned, stayed at a small inn near the Catskills, and spent 3 days doing nothing but hiking, eating, and sleeping. No phones, no social media, no family group chat blowing up with messages I didn't want to read. When we got back to Brooklyn, reality hit. My mom had left 2 voicemails. I didn't listen to them. My dad sent a single text, "You embarrassed us. I hope you're happy." I deleted it without responding. Vanessa blocked me on everything. Instagram, Facebook, her phone. I didn't chase her. I didn't apologize. I didn't try to fix it. For the first time in my life, I let her sit with the consequences of her own choices. A week later, my aunt called. Not to yell at me, to check in. "Your mom's upset," she said carefully, "but she's also thinking. I don't know if she'll admit it, but I think you got through to her." "I don't need her to admit anything," I said. "I just need her to stop pretending I didn't exist unless I was useful." "Fair," my aunt said. Then, quieter. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you." It was the first time anyone in my family had said that in years. I cried after we hung up. Not sad tears. Just release. A month passed. Then 2. My parents didn't reach out. Vanessa didn't either. The family group chat went quiet. Holidays came and went. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving. I didn't feel guilty about it. Ethan and I started building our own traditions. Quiet dinners. Weekend trips. A life that wasn't shaped by people who only saw me when they needed something. And then, 3 months after the wedding, my mom called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Hi," she said. Her voice was small, tired. "Can we talk?" "About what?" I asked. "About everything," she said. "I've been thinking a lot. About what you said. About how we treated you, and I think you were right." I didn't respond right away. I waited. Let her sit with the silence the way I'd sat with it for years. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I don't know if that's enough, but I am. We failed you. I see that now." "What about Vanessa?" I asked. "She's struggling," my mom admitted. "Without us bailing her out every time, she's had to figure things out. It's been hard, but your dad and I agreed we can't keep doing what we were doing. It wasn't helping her. It was just enabling her." I sat down on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not that everything would be fixed overnight, but that maybe, finally, my parents were starting to see the truth I'd been screaming into the void my whole life. "I'm not coming back just to be ignored again," I said. "If we're going to have a relationship, it has to be real, not just when it's convenient for you." "I understand," she said. "I do, and I'm willing to try, if you are." I thought about it. About the years of silence. The years of being called strong when I was really just surviving. The folder full of receipts I'd carried to my own wedding because I was tired of being erased. "I'll think about it," I said, "but I'm not making any promises." "That's fair," she said, and for the first time she didn't push. She just said, "I love you, Paige." "I know," I said, and I hung up. I don't know what happens next. Maybe my parents and I rebuild something, maybe we don't, maybe Vanessa grows up, or maybe she doesn't. But for the first time in my life, their choices aren't mine to carry. I'm not the backup plan. I'm not the emergency contact. I'm not the daughter who has to be strong so everyone else can fall apart. I'm just Paige. And that's enough. If you made it to the end, hit like and subscribe for more family revenge stories. And comment your verdict. Was Paige petty or justified? And should she forgive them one day or cut them off for good?